Let's talk about report cards, in particular for Norwood Elementary School at the elementary level for Baltimore County Public Schools. If you go to another elementary school, a lot of this may apply to your school. It'll be very similar, if not identical. But if you go to older grades like middle or high school, we will have some things that apply to you. We will mention some differences, so you can keep that in mind. Let's get started talking about the envelope that they come in. They usually come in this yellow or brownish envelope where all you have to do is take out your copy of the report card, and you don't want to leave it in there and return it with it, because how else will you reward your children for their amazing performance? And then you're going to want to sign the line that corresponds to the marking period, the quarter. So if it's the second, you sign the second line. If it's the third, you sign the third line. And then you check that box to indicate if you want a conference with the teacher, and they will get back to you to schedule that. It's as easy as that. And you don't have to wait for this to schedule a conference. You can do that anytime. That's your right as a parent. But this is just a way to kind of help indicate maybe it's about time if you haven't talked in a while, or if you just don't understand why they got the grades that they did. Now, there's 5 main sections. We're going to talk about each one, starting with the first one, which is at the top. It's the header and the attendance table. And here's all your basic information, all your stats, what school they go to, their name, the school year, all that's up there. It's pretty self-explanatory. But then also has a running tally for the days absent in that marking period, as well as year to date, as well as days tardy, the early dismissals, and the attendance rate as a percentage, which will likely include unexcused and excused absences. So if your records aren't lining up with what you see, that may explain why, but you can always contact the teacher for some clarity, and you can also talk to the front office too. So moving on with the achievement codes. The achievement codes are a little bit different based on the grade. So for pre-kindergarten and through 3rd grade, you're going to see here that's going to be a letter scale from CD at the top and N is at the bottom. So CD is consistently demonstrating, which means on their own independently, they can consistently do the tasks that is described. P is they're progressing. They need a little assistance, but they can get it done. N is needs development. They need a lot of assistance. They can't do it on their own. And there's NA, not applicable, and NG, no grade. So they may just not have sufficient information, depending if they came late or started late, or if they're maybe and haven't gotten to that at the time of the year. There's other explanations. If you were a little disillusioned with the amount of N's, don't just first immediately think the worst, because there may be some context. We've had situations where kids, depending on when they come in, if they have special needs, if they struggled and they're going to get better throughout the year maybe, or they're an English language learner, there's all sorts of context that explain why some things in some parts of the curriculum are going to be harder for some students to wrap their head around. So it's not just a matter of your child not doing their best. And 4 through 12 and higher grades are your traditional letter grades that you're going to see here. We're not going to go through them, but they're going to be the A, B, C, D, E, A at the top, B at the bottom. And there's other things like it may be pass, fail, PF, or satisfactory, unsatisfactory, SU. Those are just some examples of other things that can show up on the older grades, including the 4th and 5th, which now have compartmentalized classes, which is the different teachers for different classes versus the lower grades that have a homeroom that teaches mostly everything. Now, it's important to note that pre-K and kindergarten only have 2 report cards for the entire year at the end of the 2nd marking period and at the 4th with the CDPN scale. Grades 1 through 3 have 4 report cards per year, and that's for 1 for each quarter. And then they have the same CDP and N scale that you see at the top. But grades 4 through 12, so 4th and 5th at elementary school, will have the A, B, C, D, E scale. And there's also going to be these numerical scales that we'll talk about at the end. We'll go back to the skills and conduct and what that is, because that's a little bit different, the skills and conduct. So moving on to the subjects, the classes, the content areas, they're going to be just pretty self-explanatory. You're going to see each one, regardless whether it's one teacher doing it all like the homeroom, or if it's going to be different teachers because they're in older grades with seeing different teachers. They'll have the teacher's name, and then they'll have an overall achievement grade on the right. You can see like B in this example for language arts, and then all these other skills rated numerically. And so that's how that's going to visually out. And it may even be a list as they get older, like in middle and high school. And then on a different page, they have comments. Comments just depends on the school and the teacher in particular as to how detailed they are or how many there are. There may not be many comments. There may be a lot of comments. It just really depends. And And so when we talk about modified programs and services, that's the next table that comes on either the last page or the second to last page. And it's a little table, and your child may, for example, be accelerated learning for particular subjects. Maybe they're a GT student, or they may be an English language learner, and they have certain services and accommodations for that. Or they may have an IEP, an individualized education program, or a 504. So that will be marked if it applies. If not, it'll be blank, like you see on the right. And there may just be absolutely nothing in there at all. But if they do have an IEP, they will receive a progress report in addition to the report card about their IEP's goals and their progress towards them. And that's in addition to the annual meeting that you have where you go in detail about the overall progress in that since your last meeting towards their goals. The ESOL students are going to also have a progress report that updates towards their progress with the ESOL program every single marking period. Now, the skills and conduct, we're going to go back to those numbers because for the lower grades, for pre-K through 3, it's a scale of 3, 2, 1, and 0 with 3 at the top and 0 at the bottom. And the last page will have this table that you see here on the left that is going to give you an example. That's not specific to the student. It's an example of what 3s and 2s and 1s and 0 looks like across the board on those 4 major skills that they talk about. And we've circled them an example of a subject matter. So that's classroom conduct, work completion, working with adults, and working with students. You'll see that in some of them, not all necessarily, and you'll see the 3 or the 2 or the 1 or the 0. Now, why is there 4s? Well, in the older grades, like 4 and above, you're going to have this different. We're coming back now to what we talked about. 4, 3, 2, 1 instead of 3, 2, 1, 0. I know it's a little confusing, but it should be marked on the report card. If you don't see it and they're an older student, that's what this is, 4, 3, 2, 1. So look at the bottom right. You're going to see we've circled. It's just listed differently. Instead of having each subject area like its own little paragraph with all those things listed, it's just a list. And then you'll have maybe comments on a different page altogether. But on the right side, far end of that list, you'll see conduct, work completion, working with adults, and working with students. The same exact skills and conduct areas that they are looking at for behavior necessarily in the classroom. And that's going to be the whole discussion when it comes to report cards. So if you guys have any questions or anything, don't forget to reach out to your teacher first. And then as always, you can always reach out to the office about things like attendance or things beyond the classroom. Thank you very much, and we hope you found this useful.